Hi, my name is Janice and I hope you're all doing well. In today's video, we're going to be solely focused on one food item. You can probably tell what it is by the title of my video, but we are going to be checking out 5 different places in Sydney that does really good ramen. This is going to be a video that's going to take multiple days for me to film, but for you it's going to be, I don't know how many minutes, but it's going to be like in one nicely packaged video. It is a very rainy and cold Saturday here today, which is perfect for ramen. I've got my brother with me to help me eat some food today, which is great, but we are heading to our first destination for today. You'll find out where it is very, very soon. We have just arrived at Neutral Bay. There are so many like amazing restaurants and cool things to do here. Like one day I'll probably have to do an episode just on Neutral Bay, but for now we are heading to our first ramen location for today, Yasaka Ramen. Just arrived at Yasaka Ramen and we have ordered just one of their classics really. It's a Shin Yasaka Ramen. It comes to $14.80 and the ramen flavor that we've chosen is the tonkatsu shoyu. So as I understand it, there are 3 main things most important to a ramen. First of which is the broth, and then the noodles, and then the condiments. So of course the first thing I'm going to be doing is tasting the broth. There is a huge depth of flavor, like you can really taste the pork flavor there. Okay, second thing that we're going to be tasting is the actual noodles itself. I don't want to let it sit in the broth for too long because otherwise it gets like too soggy and that's not good. The noodles are very, very chewy. It's not soggy at all, which is what you don't want. Lastly, but definitely not least, let's have a look at the condiments. It's a very simple ramen. The one that we chose is pretty much just sliced pork with some bamboo shoots and a slice of nori. Here is that piece of beautiful fatty pork. I mean, just look at that piece of pork. There's like a layer of fat on the outside, but then there's like these patterns of fat in between as well. It's soft and it's like not in your mouth. Overall, it's really, really delicious. It's so hearty and it definitely hits the spot. It's just the combination of the broth and then the really chewy noodles and then the melt in your mouth slices of pork. Wow, it's amazing. All right, we are done with our first location. Let's go and check out the second location that is on our list. Now we're on to our next location, which is actually just 5 minutes walk away. What are you doing?
You still have no cash?
I'll pay you back. For our second location, we have just arrived at Ichiban Dori, and what we've ordered is one of their signature, which is the soy-soaked char-grilled chashu ramen. And honestly, I cannot wait. Usually it is a lot more crowded and packed, but because we came here quite early, it is like 5:30, where the rush of the dinner hour hasn't started. That's why we were able to get a spot. Okay, our ramen has just arrived, and first and foremost, of course, we're gonna have to taste the broth. The broth in this ramen is a little bit different to the one we had at the first place we went to, in that it is not as thick as that one. Having said that, the amount of flavor in this broth is equally amazing. There's a pork flavor to it, but then there's also a chicken flavor. And looking at the menu, it does use pork bones and chicken bones. Wow, okay, I really love the soup, but of course I have to try the noodles. The noodles aren't soggy, which is perfect. And thirdly, but definitely not least, we need to try the condiments. First up on this list is this amazing piece of meat. When I picked it up with my chopstick, it just like completely fell apart, which hints to me that it is extremely tender. It's soft and beautiful and everything you want in a piece of pork, really. Okay, now that I've finished this bowl, let's quickly talk about like this bowl of ramen. The broth is great. Like, I personally like broths that aren't as thick, so I like that it wasn't as sort of dense, but it still had like pork flavor and chicken flavor to it. The noodles were great, like it wasn't soggy or anything. In terms of the condiments, there's like a lot of variety there. The vegetables soaked up the flavor of the broth, so it tasted really good. Oh yeah, and the egg was beautiful as well. So overall, I really enjoyed this bowl of ramen. And the third place on our list for today is a place called Ryo's Noodles. This is a very popular ramen restaurant here in Sydney. It originally started in Crow's Nest in 2003, and every single time I drive past that place, there is a line of people waiting outside. So today we're at the Bondi Junction restaurant. There is relatively less people here, and I came here really early, like 10 minutes before they open because I'm so eager. So without further ado, let's go in and try their famous ramen noodles. So they have like a top 5 ranking of noodles, and of course I went for the one that's ranked #1. So what I've got is the pork soy sauce soup. As with every single bowl of ramen that we've had, the first thing we gotta do is of course taste the broth. I will refrain from repeating myself over and over again, so here's why I think this is good. The pork flavor is very, very strong. And yes, it is pork and soy sauce, but it's like not overly salty that it doesn't even make sense. It's got a very good depth of flavor, but it's not too thick that it's kind of like, ooh, I need a glass of water. Do you know what I mean? I like the broth. Let's try the noodles. Okay, here's what I like about it. They're really chewy. The flavors of the broth is like attached to the noodles. So even though I'm eating noodles on its own, I can still taste the broth. Third, but definitely not least, it's very, very important to a bowl of ramen, the condiments. They're not chewy, they're like buttery soft. They're kind of like the broth itself, but in solid form. You know, in a lot of the ramen, they give you like a large piece of seaweed, and I never really know what to do with it. I just like dunk it in the soup and then it gets all soft and stuff, and then I just like eat it. I think that's what you're supposed to do. I really don't know. If I'm wrong, just let me know. It's not bad. I honestly would come here just for the pork slices. That was really good. Okay, you might be wondering, what are we doing in a park? We were just about to go into RaRa Ramen. Aren't we supposed to be in the restaurant? Good question. The reason we're sitting out here is because I've already had my ramen. It was great, but the music was really loud and the sound didn't turn out too well. So I am filming my commentary of the noodles while I'm here. I'm actually seated right next to the road, so the sound might actually be worse. And if it is, I apologize in advance. Okay, anyway, let's just get into it. Let's just evaluate the noodles based on the 3 criteria that we've set for ourselves. So the broth, I said it was very creamy, a little bit salty, and had a good porky flavor to it. It wasn't too thick, which is what I love. I don't like broths that are too like viscous. And overall, like, it paired quite well with the noodles. What did I write? The noodles got a lot of chew. So personally, I like that a lot. That's exactly what I wrote. You know how there's like undercooked, overcooked? It was like just over undercooked, which is like exactly how I like noodles. So it was very chewy. It was perfect with the creamy and the salty broth, and then the condiments or the toppings. So there were like 4 main toppings that they gave. It was the massive piece of char siu, they had the egg, they had the fungus, and also they had the shallots. But what I really wanted to talk about is the piece of pork, the char siu. It was a pretty thick and big piece of pork. There was, you know, a little bit of fat around it. It's nice and soft, but if I had to compare it with another bowl that I had earlier today, which was at Rio's Ramen, I think that the pork there is the softest and the most buttery I've ever had. Anyway, that is it for now. We have one more location that we need to hit, which I will not go today because I've already had 2 bowls of ramen for breakfast and lunch. So we'll hit that another day. Okay, I've just arrived at Gumshara for our last ramen for this video. Now, Gumshara is like a place where a lot of my friends like absolutely love. If I ask them where their favorite ramen place is in Sydney, this is where it's at. I've been to Gumshara a few times, but personally, I find their broth a little bit too thick for my liking. But the thing is, if there are so many of my friends that absolutely love this place, there are probably a lot of people that really love like really thick tonkatsu broth as well. So as our last ramen place, I'm going to be including this one. So what I'm having today is the tonkatsu ramen noodles. It comes to $13.50. They do have a notice up on the cashier or the counter where they says if the broth is too thick, they can adjust it for you. I didn't ask for any adjustment. I'm just having it as is. So yeah, let me show you what this ramen is all about. Like we've done in all our other ramen places, the first thing that we are going to do is to taste the broth. When I was like trying to move the noodles away, you can see like a really thin layer on top that is like solidified. That's how thick the broth is. There's also a notice that says they don't use any thickener like cornstarch or potato starch. They use only pork bone and water, and they use 250 kilos of pork bone every day. It's incredible. It is really, really thick, but it is like really full of flavor. It is quite salty as well. I don't think it's too salty. I think it's just at that like benchmark thing where if there's like more salt, then it's too salty. It's just right. Okay, let me try the noodles. Because the broth is so thick, it coats the noodles like a sauce. I personally like noodles really, really chewy and kind of on the hard side. But if you like, you know, medium noodles, I think this is a good place to go. All right, so now let's try the pieces of pork. This is what it looks like. It's good. It does taste like the actual broth itself, purely because it's been sort of soaked in the broth. I'm now done with my ramen. I'm gonna give my final commentary outside because there's a TV playing behind me. I don't know how loud it's being picked up by the mic. So let's just go out and then we'll have a chat about this bowl of ramen that I've just finished. Alright, let's talk about the bowl of ramen that I just had at Gumshara. See, I genuinely think that they do a good bowl of ramen. If I didn't, I wouldn't be including it in this video. One of the most well-known aspects of their ramen is their broth, and their broth is really, really dense and really, really thick. If you're someone that enjoys a thick broth in your ramen noodles, then by all means, I think that you actually really like this place. By that same token, if you don't like having a really thick broth in your ramen, then I don't think you'll like that place too much. That's just what I think. I hope you enjoyed this video. I know that there are a lot more amazing ramen here in Sydney that I didn't include in this video. If there's any that I've missed and you're completely mind blown at the fact that I didn't include it in this list, please let me know in the comments below and we might do a part 2. Alright, that is it for today. Thank you so much for watching till the end. I post new videos Tuesdays and Fridays. Check them out if you have time. Have an amazing rest of the day and I'll see you in my next video. Bye! Because I'm not